talk about Zapplink for just a minute. Underneath the document menu, you might have noticed there's a Zapplink button in here as you've been messing around with Zbrush. I'll go ahead and click that, and you'll notice it'll bring up a Projection Master-esque type of window. And some of these options, like double-sided and fade, you'll recognize from Projection Master. Basically, what Zbrush is going to do is capture your document, throw it into Photoshop, and allow you to paint in Photoshop with all the Photoshop options, and convert that to a poly paint when you bring it back in. That sounds a little bit abstract, don't worry. I'm going to do an example of that in just a minute. But first what we're going to do is talk about the Zapplink properties, which is down here at the very bottom of the document menu. You'll see a Zapplink properties menu. I'm going to open that up. There's a Make Character Sheet button right at the top, and then there's these Views buttons. Let's go ahead and talk about this for just a minute. Go ahead and dock the document window. Now, these under Zapplink properties, you've got front, back, left, top, and bottom. What you can do is you can actually save views using Zapplink, which is really useful. So for example, I've got my character over here in my document, or my canvas, and he's in the front view. I can hold down Shift and I can snap him to the front if I want. And I'll go ahead and click this front button. And you notice it actually puts an orange line next to the front and the back. It went ahead and saved me a front and back view. So now, no matter what I'm doing or in here sculpting on my character or whatever, if I ever want to snap back to that exact front view, all I got to do is come over here underneath the Zapplink properties menu and just click that front button. That'll snap me right back perfectly to that front view. Or I can click that back button, and there's that back view that it automatically saved for me. So if you do a lot of capturing of documents and throwing them into Photoshop and using layers with different material properties to do composites, this is a really useful tool. While we're at it, we'll go ahead and snap him to the right and click the right button, and you'll notice it automatically made us a left one. And I'll go ahead and do a top and a bottom view while we're here. We'll click top, and it went and made it bottom. And then next we'll make a custom, which I guess we'll just make a 3/4. So I'll go ahead and hit custom 1. With all these views selected, what you can do is actually save those views for later, and then here's your load views. Or you can actually come up here to the very top and click Make Character Sheet. We'll go ahead and click that. And that's going to do is capture, based on our canvas size, which is 1120 by 840, and throw it into Photoshop. Go ahead and zoom in on this. So again, we'll go into size, and you notice our height is 840. If you wanted a bigger character sheet, go ahead and make your document size bigger, and then do another character sheet. If I hold down Control, you'll see it's actually alphaed out for us. You can change this background to whatever color you want. Let's fill it with a black. And now you've got your characters on one layer, and your background on another, and it makes a nice, tidy character sheet for you. We'll go ahead and close that, and we'll tab back into Zbrush. And before we go into the Photoshop Zapplink, what I'm going to do is go over here under my properties and go ahead and clear all my views. And then we'll go up here under document. We'll go ahead and close that out, and we'll get some more space in here. First thing I'm going to do is go ahead and zoom in. You notice as I zoom in, I'm zooming in on the nape of his neck here. With local turned on over here, that's actually going to zoom in on the last place, or zoom around, rotate around the last place that you clicked. So if I click his forehead up here, it'll actually zoom right in on his face. Same thing as if you're working on a hand over here, it'll actually zoom around and tumble around his hand, which is useful when you're working on small areas. If for some reason you don't want that on, you can go over here and turn local off. But anyways, so I'll just tap his forehead and we'll zoom right in on his face. What we're going to do is put a photographic eyeball right on him. I'm going to go ahead and turn off perspective for this while I'm working in Zapplink. And underneath document, go ahead and click that Zapplink button again. And here's our window. I went ahead and turned off double-sided and fade because I don't need it for this. And I'm not going to be working in perspective, so I'll go ahead and hit drop now. That's going to throw my face into Photoshop. So you've got over here, underneath layers, you've got your Z shading. And it'll tell you right here, do not edit this layer, so it's locked. And then here's your flat color, which you can edit. And then here's your fill. This is the background fill. So here's your layer 1, which is your color shaded. And you can work on here with this Z shading off if you'd like. But I'll go ahead and turn that back on. And we'll go ahead and make a new layer. And here's our eyeball all loaded up. I got this eyeball from 3DSK. If you haven't gone there, definitely check it out. It's www.3d.sk. Tons of reference for human anatomy, clothed, naked, close-ups of eyeballs, tongues, all sorts of stuff in there. So definitely check that out if you haven't yet. It's a great resource. And they've got weapons there and metal and all sorts of cool stuff that you might need as an artist. So I'm going to go and grab my lasso tool. And we'll just grab his eyeball here. And I'm going to copy. Go back into this one and paste. So that pasted into that new layer that's above our flat color. And this is a huge picture of an eyeball. I'm going to shrink this down. And we'll shrink it down to size. And go to enter. And I'm going to make a quick mask for this. I'm going to invert it. And then with our brush, the white color, I'm going to brush back in where we want that eyeball to go. It's good enough. So I'll go ahead and duplicate this. We'll go to Edit, Transform, Flip Horizontal. And we'll just throw that over onto the other side. And if we're happy with that, what I'm going to do is go ahead and shift all the way down to that first layer. And I'm going to hit Control E. And it's going to collapse all those layers down. I'm going to hit Control S now to save that. And go ahead and close that. I'm going to tab back over to ZBrush. And a menu is going to come up. If you saved and you actually made changes, it's going to have a little option up here that says Re-enter ZBrush. If it says Unchanged right here, go ahead and click the Return to External Editor and make sure that you saved your changes. So we'll go ahead and re-enter. And we'll go ahead and pick up. And as you can see, it actually dropped the photographs of the eyeballs right on the eyeball area where we wanted it to. And it says the pickup sequence is completed. So we can go around and check him out. And he's got some really creepy human eyeballs on him now. Back into perspective mode. There you go. Nice and creepy. So, of course, that's not limited to just putting eyeballs on your character. You could put an entire face on him, entire body. If you've got armor, you can go grab a picture of armor or Kevlar or cloth or whatever and just Zapplink it on there. Totally easy way to texture or to polypaint on your character. His eyes look a little extreme, so what I'm going to do, move them over to the side, and I'll go under Material. And if you get a ton of materials in here, I don't know if I showed you this or not, but you can actually go down to Show Used, and that'll only have the materials that are actually in your document window at that moment. You'll notice I don't have any metal stuff because I don't have any metal subtools on this guy. I took all his armor off. But if you did have an armor on him with a metal shader, it'll actually it'll show up as long as it's turned on when you hit Show Used. So there's our toy plastic. That is the material that's on his eyeball. So we'll go under Modifiers. And his diffuse is at 100, his ambient's at 35. I'm going to tame those down just a tad, since they're kind of blinding. His eyeballs are kind of blinding. And you notice it's actually making his teeth and his lips darker. If I didn't want that to happen and I wanted just an eyeball shader, what I could do is go to Toy Plastic, and I could copy that material and paste it into another one. And then I could just paint his eyes with the Toy Plastic 2, is what it would end up being. And that way I could tune these this Toy Plastic independently of the other toy plastics. But for now, we're just going to darken these just a tad so they're not almost self-illuminated looking. And there's our guy with his creepy real human eyeballs. Like I kind of mentioned in passing before, you can take multiple versions of your Z doc right here, capture that and take it into Photoshop and overlay them or color burn them or together, or take different specularities. I'm going to kind of explain that a little bit better here just really quickly. So what I'm going to do is go into Document, and we're going to go ahead and save a custom view. So get them how you like them in your document. And go to Document, open your Zapplink Properties menu, and we'll make this a custom one. So now no matter what I do, I can always go back and snap directly to that custom one perfectly, so that when I overlay in Photoshop, there's no jittering or anything like that. So if you want to capture this, you can go to Texture. I'm going to grab the doc. And when we grab the doc in the texture menu, it's going to grab our document, and you can go ahead and export that as a PSD. And then you can export multiple versions of this. For example, we'll go ahead and turn off our colorize on these our three subtools. And you'll notice the teeth are a little bit darker by default. You can change that underneath Preferences. You go to Preferences, Edit, and this inactive subtool dimming. It's set at 0.75 by default. We'll go ahead and crank that up to 0.9. And that should kind of help even out the value between the face and the unselected subtools. So we'll go ahead and go into our document, and we'll snap back to that custom one. And we can make this black with our toy plastic material and go to Texture, grab Doc, and that'll save this out as a specular that you can overlay or whatever. You can change it to another material, and you can change your color, and you can save this off as a red specular, and you can do crazy things with that in Photoshop as well. And when you're done with that, if you go under Alpha, and if you're in the Alpha menu and you hit Grab Dock, what that's going to do is grab a Z depth, which you can take into Photoshop and get kind of a depth of field going. So that's a couple different ways that you can grab your document and take into Photoshop and make a nice composite image. One last thing about Zapplink before we move on, and you can file this under troubleshooting, is if you're in ZBrush and you're trying to open a hit Zapplink and just throwing it to another program like ACDC or another image viewer, what you got to do is make sure, go to an Explorer window and go to a Photoshop file, and you have to make sure that the Photoshop files open in Photoshop by default. So go ahead and right click, and in Windows you can go Open With, and you can choose the default program, and we just choose Photoshop. And that'll ensure that every time ZBrush tries to open your Photoshop document, it'll open in Photoshop, and you won't end up in an image viewer where you can't really edit it.